Hey guys, Morgan's Maintenance. Today's video is going to be a watch me work. I'm going to a commercial tenant that I'm kind of doing a sweet turn, several different repairs, lots of wall repairs that I've already got done. I've got a painter coming in to do the painting. I've got some countertop edges to repair, some flooring to repair, and then ultimately in this video, because I left all my extra batteries at home, so I've only got the one that's in my camera right now, so I'm starting out with a louver door. So it goes to a utility closet where the furnace is. All the louvers on the bottom were broken out, and I ordered a new door slab. I've got that, so I've got to route the hinges. I've got to route the strike and latch and all that kind of stuff, and then drill a hole for a lock set. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to record that. If I've got more battery left, I'll record some other stuff, but that's what we're going to start out with. So the next time you see me, we'll be in the suite and we're going to start working on that door. But let's go ahead and get into it. So now that I'm in this space, let me just go over some of the stuff before I get into the work of what I typically do in places, just to give you guys an idea of the type of work I do. Again, tons of drywall repair inside of this suite. The previous tenant had all sorts of things where once you peeled it off the wall, it peeled all the paper and all that kind of stuff. So lots of areas where I had to end up skimming. Like for instance, in here, there was a built-in bookshelf and desk. I had to take those out, so now I got to pull that floor back so far, replace that, put some new baseboard. Again, just tons and tons of drywall repairs. And then in the kitchen area or break room or whatever this is, countertop edges are all missing, so I have to try to find some of those and get those repaired. And then the thing I'm going to be recording today is that this furnace room over here, it had a louver door on it. You can see here with the plastic, all those louvers are broke out at the bottom. I went and got a new door slab, ordered it, that is repaired, but I have to mortise all the hinges, the doorknob, all that kind of stuff, and make it basically fit this opening the same way as that old door did. So I'm going to put my DGI on my head. We're going to make that happen. And again, if I got more time, I'll record some of the other stuff, or more battery life, I'll record some of the other stuff as well. So I'm going to start by laying down the old door. It's always nice if you have the old door, because then you can just go by that. I have been in places plenty of times where you don't have the old door. Maybe it was a door that was taken off and then they got rid of it, and now the new tenant wants the door. So then you have to buy a slab and basically make it fit. That's a little bit different process as far as getting the measurements, but with this, I just need to make sure I've got the door oriented right as far as top and bottom, left and right, and then make sure I just lay it down. Even with the other door, you always want to line up the top of the door. That's the most important, not the bottom. One could be a little bit longer, a little bit shorter, but that hinge location has to be based off the header, not the floor. So I'm going to make sure and line that up, clamp it together just to make sure it doesn't move, and then I'm going to get out my square, and then I'm going to mark all those spots where the existing hinge is. That way I'm matching up those locations. Now I'm going to get out my M18 router, and then also this hinge jig by Ryobi. So these Ryobi door jigs are not very expensive at Home Depot. They have been the best I've used so far. I've tried like 4 or 5 different ones. I've even got a really expensive, I think it's a Bosch brand, of where you like lay out the whole entire door. It's a big thing to set up. This is super easy. Basically, I'm going to line up the hinge location on those 2 marks. I'm going to tighten it down. Then I'm going to get out my router and I'm going to route these. Bit. They even come with the bit. That's what's inside of there. There is a depth setting gauge over here for whether or not it is whether or not you're using certain shims or not in there. It doesn't ever really come out right. I always start out with it on there, but usually I end up having to go a little bit deeper than what that setting actually is. So here I'm, checking it out, seeing if it's deep enough. It's not, so I'm going to go ahead and drop it a little bit more. Now I'm going to take this off, and normally I have a hinge, or at least a half a hinge. I used to keep one in this box. That's what I'm looking for here. But then I remembered I actually had to use that half to repair a hinge. So I'm going to go ahead and rob one off of the door itself and just kind of check the depth, make sure I'm kind of fitting flush. I think it was a little bit deep, so I'm going to go ahead and bump it up. It wasn't too deep. It's perfectly fine to work. I just want to go ahead and change it before I do the other two. And then it's just move on down the line, same exact process. Line up this hinge jig with the 2 marks that I made for the hinge, tighten it down, take the router, and then route the hinge out. Now obviously there's multiple ways to do this. You could take a chisel and, you know, a hammer and chisel this out after you mark it. You could also freehand it, not have to have this gauge. You can still use a router and do that, but I just feel like this is the easiest, biggest chance for you to not mess up something type thing. And it's, you know, as you can see, it takes like a matter of minutes to get all 3 of those hinges in the right location and routed out. Now that I've got those routed out, I'm going to get the door stood up, get the old one out of the way. That one will end up going to the trash, but the dumpster was pretty full whenever I drove in this morning, so I'll wait until they pick that up. So I'm going to take my DeWalt stands. I've also got some hinge screws inside of my door box as well. I'm going to get them lined up as far as get this door lined up on the jamb and adjust the height up and down with those DeWalt jack stands. By far, probably one of my favorite purchases this year are those DeWalt jack stands, because it makes it super simple to be able to do all this by yourself. So I'm just checking to make sure I've got the door in the right orientation. I realized I had it upside down. I knew I routed them right, because I routed them exactly the same as the other door, but I was like, something's going on here. It's not lining up right. So now that I've got it right, I'm going to line up those hinges and then use my foot to press on the DeWalt jacks in order to get the height of the door right and get that lined up. Now, in a normal situation, I would probably use some self-centering drill bits and pre-drill these holes, but this was a very light door, and you know, it's not really even a door that gets open and closed that much, and I can do pretty good with the surge and just make sure I take my time putting them in, usually on the number 2 setting, and it's not going to be a problem. So getting all the hinges screwed in. Now I've got to get that top half of the hinge. I should have put that back in before I did this. I'm trying to figure out a way to get it in there without moving my jacks, but I've already got it screwed in enough. I can basically take those and get them out of the way anyways. That way I can come in here on this side and put this other half of the hinge back in that I took out to check for flushness on my router jig. Now that I've got all the hinges on and screwed in, I'm going to shut the door and check the reveal. And it was a little bit cockeyed, like it needed to move over towards the hinge at the top and away from the hinge at the bottom. So I'm going to get out some of these hinge shims. I always carry some of these with me. These are great. Like, I spent many years making my own out of cardboard or making my own out of whatever I had available to me. But these are well worth the money just to keep in a door box like what I've got here. And essentially all you got to do is go over to your hinge, loosen up the 3 screws. You don't even have to take them all the way out. And then whenever you shut the door like I'm going to here, that hinge comes out just enough where you can slide that back in there. And then I just push it back in there with my keys that were in my pocket. And then you just go back in and tighten up those 3 screws. So you don't even have to take the hinge, you know, all the way off. but it's pretty easy to install those, and it helps out a lot, especially just any door you've got out of adjustment. So now I'm checking it. Everything looks good. Top's good. Side's good. So now I'm going to go ahead and, well, I thought I was going to go ahead and mark where I'm going to drill the doorknob, but then I realized they had their strike plate down a ton from the factory, like where it's supposed to be, and the screws weren't holding in anything. So I thought I'm gonna go ahead and bump this thing up, and then I'll drill out the knob to fit here, since that's what I'm going to be doing. So now I'm going to mark at that location. So that's why I didn't mark off where the door hole was from the existing door, because I didn't really pay a lot of attention to it whenever I was actually taking the door off, if it was latching good and all that kind of stuff. So I always like to wait and do this after I've got the door hung and adjusted. Getting out my Milwaukee door lock installation kit. It's not really my favorite one, but it fits in my pack out box really well. It's very small and compact, I guess, is the right thing. And right now I'm realizing that I don't have a drill, so I'm going to go out to my truck here in just a second. Can't remember everything all the time. So 2 3/8 back set on this one. I'm going to drill through the face until basically I see the drill bit come through the back side. And once I see it kind of poke its head out, I flip it around just to make sure I don't blow out a big chunk on the back side of that door. Then change over to the hole saw for the latch. This is the thing I don't like about this Milwaukee. I feel like it kind of offsets this hole a little bit. There's not any kind of adjustment on it. You'll see once I route out the latch plate spot that the hole is kind of a little bit always forward facing. It typically gets covered up with most lock sets, but it still just doesn't seem like it lines up right, but it's not bad. So here I got this out just to show you. It's not what I'm going to use, but this is another option from Ryobi. It's a little hammer action. You can hammer, it gives you an outline, and then you go in there and chisel out. But if I've got the option, this is the preferred one. I got this at Home Depot as well. It's essentially a Ryobi router latch mortiser. So you're going to use your router with this. It's basically the same as that hinge jig, except for it works for your latch. Same thing, it has a depth adjustment thing on the side that really is never right. I don't know how it's supposed to work, or I've not figured it out. I always end up having to go a little bit deeper than whatever that shows. So here I'm going to put my jack in place just to keep the door from moving on me. Giving it a little test, having to make it go a little deeper. Another little test. Still needs to go just a hair deeper. And again, this just gives you a much cleaner finish than if you take some chisels, or at least it's a lot faster to get a cleaner finish than taking chisels and a hammer and, you know, all that kind of stuff. Now I'm going to go find the lock set. It was up on that countertop, but my buddy who was working with me the other day, he went around and in a nice way cleaned up everything. I remembered he said he was sticking stuff in drawers, but I couldn't remember what drawer he said, so I had to go looking around because there was already a lock set on the existing door I had taken it off already before I took the door off. So I'm just reinstalling that same one. And I'm also going to be doing like a full clean on the floors and all that kind of stuff. So that's why I'm not as picky. There's no customer in here. It's just me. I still do vacuum the floor up later, but that's why like I'm not putting something down or vacuuming while I'm actually doing the work, because I'm going to end up doing a clean of the entire space once all the work's done anyways. Now just tightening that down. This one's easy enough to get to with a long bit on there, so I wasn't worried about that. Now I'm just going to check it, make sure everything's latching good like it's supposed to. Reveals look good. Everything about it looks good. Now it's just a matter of getting all my stuff put back in the box, getting all the stuff put up. So again, this is a deep pack out organizer. I've got all my door install stuff, whether it's the door lock installation, whether it's hinge installation, a complete door installation. I've got even some stuff to cut trim screws, reveal tools, all those kinds of things are basically in that box. So anytime I'm doing any work on a door, I grab that out of my garage, I throw it in the back of my truck, and then I'm good to go. And then I've also again got a pack out. I think this pack out was like a hole saw pack out that I got at some point in time that I put that router in. So I'm just getting that router bit put up. I forgot to put that into that jig. Getting all my stuff put up, stacked up, out of the way, so I can go get the vacuum out and get all this dust picked up. Because again, even though I'm going to clean it up later, I want to keep it as clean as possible while I'm working, so I'm just not dragging that dust everywhere. But there you go, guys. There is the louver door slab install. Essentially, I just took the new door, laid it next to the old door, transferred those hinges over, routed them out, hung it up there. If for some reason you don't have the existing door, it's always easier if you do. But essentially, you just measure down to your top hinge, the next hinge, get your measurements from the top, and then also add like an 1/8 or 3/16, whatever you want this gap to be. Now, I didn't go ahead and match up the doorknob hole with the old door because I wanted to make sure and put the door in there first, make sure it was kind of set right. You saw me add a hinge shim over there on that bottom hinge to kind of move the door a little bit. That way I knew I'd be drilling that hole out in the exact location where it needed to be. I didn't pay any attention to the original door before I took it off if it was like latching good or anything like that. So again, pretty easy. The Ryobi stuff is amazing. It's pretty cheap as far as for the hinge router and all that kind of stuff. I really like the strike plate router as well. I've got that one that you can just hammer and then chisel out. I use that sometimes if I'm just going in and like changing out a doorknob and something needs to be taken out a little bit, but the router is always the cleanest and best option in my opinion. Those are actually some of the better Ryobi tools that I've owned. Like I've tried those, I've tried some other ones. The Milwaukee doorknob thing is okay. It's not my favorite. You probably noticed the hole on your latch and stuff was a little bit offset a little bit. You can't really adjust that on that one. So there might be some better options for that one out there, but I do like how that one fit in my box. So that's the main reason why I got that. But pretty easy install, doesn't take very long if you got the right tools. That was a little bit of my day before I ran out of battery. Hope it was interesting. You guys stay safe, have a blessed day. I'll see you on the next video.